Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever. Recyclico's patented recycling process achieves up to 100% recovery of battery metals from lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, and aluminum. Recyclico Battery Materials Incorporated trades on the TSX Venture AMY, on the OTCQB AMYZF, and Frankfurt ID4. For more information, visit recyclicode.com or phone us at 778-574-4444. Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Jim.
Mark, with all the trouble in the Middle East, oil tankers now having to go around the Horn instead of using the Red Sea, do you think we're going to see a huge spike in oil prices?
I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, honestly. I mean, you sort of watch the tape. I mean, the oil indexes and the stocks aren't reacting bullishly to this story. So either they're covering it up, trying to downplay it, and the cream puff will hit the fan, down the road here, and they'll just explode, or it's under control, or the amount maybe the stuff's getting to ports, just delayed. I can't really give you the answer. I mean, the markets do what the markets do, and sometimes an obvious story could have a very short-term effect and then peter out. But we got to remember that markets are controlled, and I'm one of the few that even discuss this. When I say, the CPI came out, or the producer price index comes out, and I say, well, how do you know these numbers are even right? How do you know they're not fraudulent? How do you know they're not made up? So that's sort of my whole position. I don't believe all the stories. I guess you can't discount the Red Sea story as being a story, but, right away you don't know what's real and what's not real. That's the unfortunate part of the markets. And I've learned this the hard way over the years, that you have distorted numbers. And so you got to sort of watch the tape. And what's the tape saying? Well, it's saying that the oil stocks and oil are under pressure, and they're not showing any new buying. So I'm going to wait for the signal. I'm, personally very bullish. I think there's a lot more to the upside, and they're all going through a correction right now. But we talked about this, I think, on the previous show. There could be a change of administration in the U.S., more pro-oil in terms of production. Maybe the market's anticipating, a conservative or Republican victory in the U.S. in the fall, and which would mean the spigots would be opened, and that would certainly be a depressant on price. So that could be part of it too, So, but the obvious reaction to the Red Sea story, was minimal. It had a little bit of a bounce, and the tape is not saying anything else. So I guess I'm just cautiously optimistic. I like many of the shares. They pay some good dividends, and ultimately I think there's value there, particularly a name like Occidental Petroleum with Warren Buffett's big position there, and who knows what's going to happen with all that. So it could mean, merger, takeover, something could be happening down the road. So I'm sort of biased to that particular stock because of his involvement. But it is just going through a correction. But it doesn't look terrible to me. It just looks like it's in a correction. But that's sort of the best answer I can give you. I'm cautiously optimistic on the group, but the tape is not saying this is the moment to jump in with both feet.
Buying opportunities coming up perhaps in the near future?
In oil?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got to wait for the tape. I got to wait for some confirmation. I mean, I'll be all over it once I get, the strong confirmation. I mean, names like Pioneer Natural Gas is still supposedly going to be taken over by Exxon, and there's still acquisitions and mergers in the industry. So obviously, the powers that be there feel there's value. I just think, again, I think it's a correction, but the reality of how the market interprets the stories, with the Red Sea and any results in the election. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see. So, meanwhile, you can trade them in the meantime. They're tradable. But I don't see like a strong push to the upside tomorrow morning. But if it does happen and volume comes in with or without the story, I'd be all over it.
Is one of the reasons why oil prices aren't as high as we might suspect, given the conditions in the Middle East, is that the U.S. is really now a net exporter of oil, something like 3 million barrels a day.
Yeah, and plus they haven't replenished the strategic oil reserves. There were stories about that happening, and each week you get a different story about what's, how much oil is being produced, what the reserves are. And again, I question a lot of these are government reports, and I don't know the authenticity of all these, whether you can really go for them. So that's why I say I sort of just look through the tape, what's the buyers and sellers saying, on the screens when I'm watching them. And, it's not wholesale selling or anything, but they are sort of drifting lower to sideways. So they're waiting for something. And, maybe there's going to be, we still have a war going on. I mean, we don't talk the Houthis and, of course, the Red Sea is just part and parcel to it. But, we still have Ukraine, we still have China, and, Taiwan. We still have North Korea out there. Iran can pull something. I mean, there's all these firecrackers out there, and a lot of things could change, really quickly. So, I'm just waiting for some technical trigger, not necessarily a news trigger there, but I guess that's really all I can comment at the moment. We're just, watching them and trading them.
Up to the other day, Iran was fighting everybody else through proxies, but they threw some missiles at Pakistan. Pakistan's retaliating. So there's another war in the East that we have to worry about.
Right. I keep repeating the same line here. I watch financial television or read the news, and it's like 90, maybe it's 98%. Maybe I was going to say 90%. It's like the Fed this and the Fed that, and the interest rates this and the interest rate that. And that's like the entire discussion. But what about, like you say, Pakistan, Iran, and all these other, wild things going on out there that could happen? We're not even talking, cosmic stuff or something like a volcano going off or hurricanes or tsunamis and other points of destruction, which, as we approach the summer this year, that's always a risk. But, we're at war. I mean, planes sending over to Syria and to the Houthis and fire. I mean, in decades past, that would be a war would be instantly recognized. I remember, I'm trying to remember in the South China Sea back in the mid-'60s that event that was covered over with a freighter that was attacked. My mind's going blank on you would know the name of it or remember it when I bring it up, but it was like, an event that is enough that would normally trigger, a declaration of war, and that was sort of covered over. I mean, it's like all these things are happening and they're military actions. And we're at war, and we're at risk, and things could happen here. And this technology, forget the secret government technology and all the stuff we've talked about in previous broadcasts. I'm talking about, just the military stuff. Russia's got some pretty advanced technology. And, we're not talking about necessarily being shot down overnight with an atomic bomb, but, you could be, your internet could be taken out. There's stories of other COVID being designed in China and possibly spread that could be deadly. Again, the whole the virus pandemic type scenario. Basically what I've been writing about in the letter is I've just been looking for another outlier event. I mean, what is it going to be? I mean, we've had a few of them. Of course, a couple wars recently here, and you had the banking crisis last year, and it just seems like the powers that be just cover it over. In other words, we got the plunge protection team out there, the equity stabilization fund here in the U.S., there's all the manipulation of the interest rates, and we keep criticizing China, and they're the largest holder of our treasury bonds. And if they decide to dump those overnight, what would that do? I mean, interest rates would double overnight. You go to 10-12%. Forget the 5-6% nonsense. So there's all these risks out there that they're just not being discussed, and maybe, like I say, the powers that be are just sort of manipulating the markets the way Japan does in the Japanese market, where they control so much that that plunge protection team and other government institutions are out there moving markets, and they have the power. They are doing it. They just cover it over. So if that story hits, the market goes up. So people say, "Oh, it doesn't mean anything." Well, it's not a real reaction. It's a manipulative action, and none of these are really discussed in the public media. It's like, "Oh, the government report came out today, and look at that number." And that's the first thing I say to myself, "Well, how do you know it's even real? How do you know it's not manipulated or made up?" I don't even believe the numbers. I mean, numbers that are produced by industry sources, I believe, like the Chicago Purchasing Managers Index and certain index that are actually industry generated, I'm giving them more credit for being real than any government report. So meanwhile, the wool got pulled over everybody's eyes, Jim. They're talking about 4, 5, 6 interest rates cuts this year. I'm just laughing watching the financial television and reasons why you should be buying stocks, and that's why we ran up from October to the end of December. And I warned, I had a big bear on the cover of my newsletter on the last day of December. I said, this is my friend, he's coming. And everybody, not everybody, but I'm sure many who wouldn't read my stuff, figure that I'm drinking something or eating something out of the way here. But cyclically, we're down, and we should stay down for a while. I think it could be down into March, April, May, even I could see even into summer. But obviously, we use our technical work, and if it's manipulated and supported by the governments, then maybe it won't be as bad because we got the election coming up in the fall. So you just you got to trade the market. That's really what it comes down to right now. I would be cautious. There's individual stuff that's going on, like nobody can get enough of NVIDIA. NVDA, which is a ticker symbol, keeps going up every day because of the AI craze. And then we had a little pop today in Taiwan Semiconductor, which we had on our list. Of course, I'm biased to that because they're building a multi-billion-dollar plant here in Phoenix, but also it makes sense considering what's going on in Taiwan and China. So that stock had a bit of a run today. And Disney had a little pop, because they were talking more about how their streaming business might be coming together, and their connection with ESPN and all that cool stuff. So, a couple of things that were on the tape today. Today we're recording Thursday. There's always some trading action. And I'm also watching those cannabis stocks. There was this report that came out late last week, I think into the weekend, strong government internal report that was released about how produced by, several key sources that encouraging government to deregulate the marijuana plan from Schedule 1 down to Schedule 3, and the stocks had a little bit of a pop, but that hasn't even happened yet. The Banking Act is still out there, so many of these stocks are really cheap, and they're going to be tradable when these stories come to light and come to fruition. I mean, there was a little rally on the story when it happened late last week. So there's always something going on. The old expression is a bull market somewhere, right? So we'll figure it out. Meanwhile, the gold bugs have been depressed. I know you're going to ask about gold. The dollar is continuing to bounce here, and that's frustrating the gold market. Though personally, I think there's every reason in the world gold should be $2,700 or higher. I'm just wondering what's going to happen independently because of the BRICS doing something. There's another story today about the BRICS a couple of members of the BRICS getting more aggressive about creating an alternate currency and backing it by gold. And I guess something dramatic could happen overnight there, and gold will take off regardless of what the U.S. dollar is doing. So just got to keep an eye on these markets. They're really volatile, but also highly manipulated. So it's just a question of focusing and picking the right ones. But the overall market, to me, there are exceptions. There's always a bull market somewhere. As I mentioned, there's some names and stuff going out there, but I'm really not that optimistic. But I guess I have to be realistic with the U.S. election coming up and the ability of the powers that be to manipulate markets and make the existing administration look good. So we have interesting times here ahead.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, are we going to have a special offer for our listeners?
Yeah, let's do that. And I also want to make that disclaimer about my not being a financial advisor. I'm just a newsletter publisher, so I don't manage money or any of that cool stuff. So I just want to put that disclaimer out, so I'm not a registered advisor. Meanwhile, yeah, we do have an offer for our VR Trader newsletters. If you go to vrtrader.com, you pull up the screen, you'll see all the newsletters up on the screen covering, metals and cannabis and blockchain for crypto, which is something we haven't talked about so far, but it's 2022 half off. We're using the old discount, 2022 half off. You get 50% off of any of the newsletters.
What's going on with uranium right now?
It's strong. I mean, the big name Cameco, CCJ, pulled off a little bit, but still looks like it's in a big uptrend. Uranium got up to $100. It was way up considering where it's been in the last few years. And, is that a sign of war? Is that a sign of reality striking that we have to build more nuclear plants, which take a long time to do, but we know other places on Earth they are being built? It's a tough question to answer, and I don't have the answers. Why did uranium suddenly take off the way it has? So that's the big question. I mean, if there was a story out that every state in the U.S., every province in Canada was just put in applications to build new nuclear plants, and they usually, from what I understand, take 5 to 10 years to get up and running, then I can understand. So I'm just wondering what the connection is. Do we have a lot of secret projects underway by the military, both in space or on Earth, that perhaps need more uranium, more of that? It's a puzzler to me, but it's up, and the stocks are up, so the demand is up, so someone's buying it.
On the geocosmic front, do we have anything of interest happening?
Well, we always have something. I've been focusing on the seasonal patterns, and just absolutely, I educate the street on this because some people are starting to talk about it. For years, I've been talking about it. Nobody really pays attention, but I warned that we had the winter solstice coming up the end of December, and that could be a change point for the market. And obviously, it coincided almost perfectly with a top in the market. And I've been warning since then that we have the vernal equinox coming up the third week of March. And there's been many instances of that being a big low in the market, a sell-off point. And for those who want to have a little bit of a laugh, I also talk about Groundhog Day for years, February 2nd, because I did studies years ago about 2 weeks either side of Groundhog Day, the markets tend to sell off. So Puxatawny, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name, Puxatawny Phil, in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, when he comes out and looks for a shadow, February 2nd. I'm not worrying about whether we're going to have 6 weeks of more winter or not, but that date, for some reason, is an important date on the charts. It's almost like a cycle point. So I've been watching that for years, and usually I'm right about it. There's usually, you get a big sell-off just before or after that point, regardless of the vernal coming up too. So then we got some lunar things coming up as well that I watch from a cycle point of view. So the bottom line is you got to be cautious here on the overall market. Individual stocks, you can have your fun with, NVIDIA, and I think AMD, another, semiconductor stock was positive, and there's always stuff going on, but just for the time being, you got to just watch over your left shoulder here, I think, in the next couple months, and possibly even into the summer, but we just got to watch the numbers. So still having a lot of fun, though, because there's a lot of trading stuff, as I just mentioned, a couple of things that we have done well and reported well to our clients. So there's always something happening, Jim. I'm not worrying about finding a place to trade or market to find, but if you're sitting there just like waiting for oil to take off and it's not moving, get into uranium.
look at a cannabis stock, or look at a semiconductor stock that's moving at the moment, that's tradable, that everybody seems to love. So that's sort of the ground rules right now. There's always new things that flash up on the screen. So at the moment, cautious on the markets, but optimistic in that we always tend to find stuff that just pops out of nowhere. So we'll see what happens come this next week.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters. He was speaking to us from Arizona. If you have any questions for Mark or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on X @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.